Star Wars, Star Wars. Is it even possible to quantify how much impact that you've had on the general media landscape over the past several decades? I personally don't think so. Even still, with your franchise on the cusp of receiving a fresh breath of cinematic air, I figure now's as good a time as any to lend my own perspective to the 6 films that make up your rocky history. It occurred to me only after deciding to make this the subject matter of my first real video review that I was essentially dooming myself to tread down the very beaten path. Beaten like, I don't know, eggs, or beaten like myself in any and all video games I play. I don't even know. There's a joke here, I know it. There are already tons of videos out there by much more observant and thorough people than myself that showcase what's good about the original trilogy, what sucks about the prequel trilogy, and how said trilogy could have been great, and why The Force Awakens seems primed to outclass the previous 3 films without even having yet been released, as if that were difficult. I don't even have any cool or profound nostalgic Star Wars anecdotes, as many others who talk about it online do. I'd had passing encounters with the original trilogy as a child, but it took me ages, in my early teens at the very least, before I ever really sat down and watched them all the way through. And even then wasn't quite intellectually mature enough to appreciate it on the same level that most others did. Then there were the prequels, which came out when I was so young that the only one I have any memory of seeing in theaters was Revenge of the Sith. My mom has always been a big fan of the original trilogy, though, so it was only a matter of time before I came around to really appreciating it. Though if I'm being honest, she's more of a Star Trek fan. I'm giving away too much personal information because it kind of feels like I am. Anyway, what I've been building up to with this is that I've always been a bit of an outsider in regards to other Star Wars fans, and can only really offer that as any sort of unique perspective. Assuming, of course, that I don't find some groundbreaking new way of viewing the franchise in between writing this script and recording this video, and forget to remove this whole section from the introduction so I don't embarrass myself. I'll be looking at the prequels first for 3 reasons. 1, because I don't want to end this video with a bad taste in my mouth. 2, because I think looking at them as their own story distinct from the originals will be more interesting. And 3, because more negativity early on always equates to a higher view count, apparently. With that said, The Phantom Menace, everyone. First, a quick plot overview for those not in the know. Viceroy here is the leader of the Trade Federation, and at the behest of the mysterious Darth Sidious, he's performing a bit of a shakedown on the planet of Naboo. Amidala, the queen of the Naboo, has sent over a pair of Jedi Knights to talk some sense into Viceroy. However, being a blithering incompetent, Vicey decides to handle the Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn, in a way that makes them immediately aware that the jig is up. After escaping and saving the Queen, everyone packs up to fly somewhere safe, only end up damaging their ship and spending a while on the planet Tatooine trying to patch things up. While there, they pick up a slave boy named Anakin, and then do a whole bunch of not much before deciding to take the Federation down. All the while, Sidious has some freaky-looking dude by the name of Darth Maul tailing the Jedi. I'm getting all the plot stuff out of the way now because it's probably going to be a while before I get back to it. You'll see what I mean. So, we all know how this trilogy was made more to be George Lucas' big special effects showcase than anything else, and I expected that the cluttered, self-indulgent presentation of these effects would be something that wore on me gradually. So imagine my surprise when at the 2-minute and 30-second mark, barely a full minute into the movie, not counting the text scroll, one of the very first shots takes me right out of the whole thing. I find it difficult to really blame a movie when CGI that used to be passable doesn't age well, but right from the very start we get these droids that don't need to be here. They're only on screen for like a couple seconds, but that makes them more distracting than anything else. These things could have been introduced dynamically at some later point in the movie, or at least formally, so we know what exactly they even are. I mean, okay. I know what the battle droids are, because they are among the very few things the prequels came up with that are now nearly as iconic to the series as anything from the original trilogy. But I'm stuck wondering what the heck the big things are long past the point that George Lucas wanted me to care. And that's a constant problem. What's this thing? What's this thing? What's that thing? What's this thing? What are these things? Who is this person? Why should I care? What are they doing here? What purpose could that possibly serve? Why are we spending a solid minute introducing a bunch of racers no one cares about? Obviously, Lucas wants me to pay attention to these things because he spent millions of dollars on bringing them to the screen, but they hardly ever serve even a minute storytelling purpose. Not to mention, unlike the outlandish, though much less distracting creature designs in the original trilogy, they don't add to any sense of atmosphere. If the idea was just showing off that you can make pretty things in your computer, why bother making this a story-driven film? The worst part is, like the scene I just went over, a lot of the trouble with these effects is their presentation. Case in point, let's talk about the pod race for a split second. This occurs during that long stint on Tatooine I mentioned, where a lot of factors are contrived to let us see the spectacle of Anakin in this wacky races type thing. I've heard it said that the pod race starts out decent and only gets lamer the longer it goes on. I have to disagree in that I found the race a bore from the very start. It's not that I find the race pointless or a detail from the plot, it isn't really. It's just displayed in a way that's totally counter to a fun and engaging racing sequence. It's all done on these interchangeable crevices and open deserts with no variety or color, there's no background score, and as previously stated, most of the time is spent on shenanigans with walking CG showcases that we don't care about. Contrast this to the racing sequences in, say, Speed Racer, a movie I unconditionally love. There, the races are also an effect showcase, but they're also visually stunning, immaculately scored, and you look forward to each and every one. The pod race could have so easily been really fun, at least enough to justify the plot contrivances necessary to get us there, had there been any variety of visuals, directions, sound, anything. Without those things, it's just NASCAR in the desert, and that's literally the opposite of fun. And I can't help but feel like this all could have been avoided. Was that Mario? The heck is he doing here? Get out of this video, Mario. And I can't help but think that this could have been avoided had we not shot ourselves in the foot by setting this act of the film on Tatooine. Let me ask you something. What is gained by having Anakin be a native of Tatooine? Or of having him be the one who built C-3PO? Or of having the Tusken Raiders show up to do absolutely nothing of consequence? Why is it we couldn't have had him be a slave on some other, more interesting planet? Why is this the place we have to constantly go back and forth from throughout this whole series? The whole point of Tatooine in the original trilogy was that it was a place you wanted to get away from. It was the boring village at the beginning of the epic quest that you couldn't wait to get out of so you could go to the more interesting and fun places. And we're obviously meant to sympathize with Luke when he has the exact same aspirations. You know, for someone who said he wouldn't do much comparison to the original trilogy, I have been doing an awful lot of that. I really think I should stop. I'm sorry, I apologize. Back to the point, I really think the only reason we're on Tatooine is because people associate it with Star Wars, and Lucas isn't secure enough to make this quote-unquote grand narrative expand beyond the visuals that people are comfortable with. The fact that we spend so much time here in particular is a big reason I think the aesthetic of this film clashes with the other two, but I'll get into that more at another time. Something that stuck out to me watching this movie, and something I tend to bring up a lot in my written reviews, is scene transitions. And rarely, if ever, do I see anyone really go into why scene transitions are important, so I'm going to spend a while on this. I'm honestly not sure I could count how many scenes lack a satisfying opening or closing shot. I'm gonna ramble on for a bit in an attempt to explain what I mean, cool? The way I see it, unless a scene is trying to convey a sense of being rushed, the best directing choice is to have the scene open a good several seconds before the action and focus takes place. Maybe even a bit longer if you want to use the beginning of the scene to do something else, like character or world building before you get to the quote-unquote point. For an example from the original trilogy, and I swear after this I'm gonna stop bringing it up, okay? Take the scene where Han and Leia kiss. We open the scene with a good couple of seconds of Leia trying to fix the ship. That's ultimately a lead-in for Han to notice the lever is stuck, giving him an excuse to enter the vicinity, but it gives the audience some necessary seconds of downtime so we don't have to immediately shift our focus from the point of one scene to the point of another. Had this scene been in the prequel trilogy, it would have began with Han already in the shot, not giving us any time to gradually move to thinking about their relationship. This wouldn't be so bad if the prequel scenes at least incorporated this downtime into their endings. Something I noticed almost immediately throughout this movie is that scenes in The Phantom Menace won't necessarily end on a bad shot, but they would end a few seconds too early into that shot. Every good scene needs a topper, whether that's a joke, a line of dialogue, transitioning to what's next, an action, a lack of action. Whatever it is, it needs to sit there for a while because it's presumably important to conveying something. Plot, tone, character, I don't know. If it's not important, why is it in the scene? And more importantly, why is it in the end? Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So there's this scene in The Phantom Menace where Jar Jar is persuaded to take Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to his underwater city thing. And this is only the second scene with Jar Jar in it, so it's here where we learn most of what we know about him. He's timid, he's not very intelligent, and he's uncoordinated. The scene ends with him demonstrating this by accidentally almost hitting Obi-Wan with his ear as he turns around. You just instinctually expect there to be this moment where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon sort of share a look, as if to convey, like, this guy sure is easy to manipulate, or what have we gotten ourselves into with this one? Just, a general sense of bemusement. This would be a little bit of a moment to let the audience connect to these two characters, as that would be the natural reaction to have, and I feel like it's what we would have gotten had we not cut 2 seconds too early. Or how about another scene that I totally didn't intend to feature the exact same characters in the exact same location? Qui-Gon is talking to Obi-Wan, telling him how proud he is, and that could have been a really nice bonding moment for the two had we not cut away before we could get a reaction shot from Obi-Wan to really cement the moment. Or how about the very end of the movie where we go right from Qui-Gon dying to party? Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya. Take off your pants. Take off your clothes. Hey ya, hey ya. Seriously, every scene feels like this. I suppose talking about Qui-Gon's death, and the ending as a whole for that matter, should really bring me back around to the subject of the writing in the movie, so let's take a look at that, namely the characters. If you ask me, the biggest misstep of this entire series is how easily some of these character dynamics could have been made really interesting. Going back to the very beginning of The Phantom Menace, I found the introduction of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan actually had some promise. It's more than a bit clunky, and it's sandwiched inside a scene that makes no sense from a plot perspective, but I like how the very first words out of their mouths at least seem to be trying to set up a dynamic, with Obi-Wan as the slightly paranoid one,
I have a bad feeling about this.
and Qui-Gon as the one who's chill and in the moment.
Don't center on your anxieties, Obi-Wan.
Of these two characterizations, Qui-Gon's is the only one that really sticks, for lack of a better word. Obi-Wan's still got some cynical lines throughout the film, but by the end he's basically just like Qui-Gon, and the only thing that's transitioned him to that point is Qui-Gon's own death. With that said, the two of them have at least a half-decent rapport, but really every halfway decent character thing in this film ties back to Qui-Gon in some way. His friendship with Obi-Wan, his fatherly treatment of Anakin, his kindness towards Anakin's mom, his stern but calm treatment of Jar Jar, and the slight friction between he and Padme was all decent stuff. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't genius, but with Qui-Gon around, everybody felt like they had something to say and do. But that ultimately turns out to be a problem, since the film has built all of its character stuff around Qui-Gon, and by the end of the film, he's dead. Heck, by the climax, we've officially got every member of the ensemble focused squarely on resolving the Viceroy plot, and Qui-Gon has become a cog in the machine, same as everyone else. With him gone, we might as well be starting from scratch with the rest of the cast. We know how these people react to him, but we've spent so little time with them acting independent of him that they're all suddenly blank slates again. Well, that's not entirely true, since they each have at least one character trait that doesn't hinge on Qui-Gon. Anakin is an enthusiastic kid, Padme is kind and a natural leader, Jar Jar is a buffoon, etc. But for reasons I'll get into when discussing the next movie, all of that amounts to jack all. Unless you're a Smurf, you can't go around with one major character trait and that's it, especially when nothing in the movie forces you to grow or change. We could have had Jar Jar strive to be more competent in service of his master and earn a position of leadership, showing that he values the man who saved him more than a civilization that loathes him. We could have really spent some time with Anakin after Qui-Gon's death, see how he reacts to learning that Jedi aren't as invincible as he thought they were. The foundation for a cast full of really interesting people is there, but so many factors stop it from really working out. Going back to Anakin, he's a whole other bag of fish all by himself. I don't want to beat up on this kid's performance like everyone else's want to do, because in all honesty, let's be real, it could have been way, way worse. And like with everyone else, there are character traits set up here that could have been made really interesting had they been given time. Like this scene, for instance, where it's established that unlike Luke down the line, Anakin is keenly aware of what Jedi are, reveres them, and wants to be one. It's such a little thing, but I think it helps establish a few things, like just how in their prime the Jedi are during this time period, and giving Anakin some real understandable character-based reason for being a Jedi later on in the series. He doesn't just luck into it. Too bad that's ruined by the bloomin' midichlorians. The thing about the midichlorians is that they ruin Anakin's agency. The midichlorians are what makes Qui-Gon decide to take Anakin along with him. They're the thing he cites as Exhibit A as to why the Jedi should take him under their wing. And he would have done so had Anakin been gung-ho about it or not. Anakin looking up to the Jedi and wanting to be one for personal reasons is suddenly irrelevant. It's not just the main characters who are problematic either. We've got R2-D2 and Jabba the Hutt who are just more blatant fan service, the Jedi Council who really just kinda show up via another clunky transition that just sorta slaps you in the face with their presence, things like Boss Nass and Watto who are more quirk than character. Hey, why does Boss Nass do that stupid face thing he does? Why is he doing that? The only time Jar Jar does anything remotely similar is when he's trying to express, like, fear or something, but this guy just does it all the time and it serves no purpose. Why is this here? Then we have the villains. Like, what is even the deal with these guys? We have Darth Maul, who is our external threat for the whole film, but he's such a non-entity until the time comes for his final showdown that I seriously think he was one of the last things added to the script. Every scene with him feels completely distanced from the actual plot, like we're taking a detour just to have him there. Yeah, he's just the muscle for Palpatine, but let's pretend for a second that the movies planned to trick you with Palpatine's identity until this shot at the very end worked like it was supposed to. Darth Maul is our villain for 90% of this movie, and he's just not there. He has no personality, no relationship with any of the other characters, and this is fine for a Bond henchman or something, but this isn't a Bond movie. Nothing about it, including Maul's screen time, is formatted like one. Darth Vader plays pretty much the exact same role as Maul in A New Hope, but we get bits of character for him throughout that film, and we have at least a bit of a connection between him and Luke and him and Leia before that movie is ended. Because, you know, usually an antagonist has a relationship with the protagonist, so we can care at least a little bit when one of them defeats the other in a one-on-one showdown. Otherwise, they're just chess pieces moving the plot forward and giving us flashy action sequences. Honestly, I think the lack of strong villain presence ties into the other problem I have with this movie, and the last one I'm going to address in this video, I swear. That being the tone. Tone is, like a lot of things, dependent on characters and their presence within the story, and if you want a tone that carries any semblance of tension, you need the villains there consistently. There are so many huge stretches throughout the Phantom Menace where neither Darth Sidious or Darth Maul or even the Viceroy are so much as mentioned or seen on screen, and it seems like the film is just content to spin its wheels and have the characters interact in a very mellow, nonchalant way throughout most of the runtime. That's fine if you just want this whole film to be the vaguely politically charged hijinks of this ensemble as they learn to grow and get to know each other, but not only is it clear by the third act that this movie doesn't want to be a character-focused thing, but the climax wants to have stakes to it. And so we throw Darth Maul back into the mix as haphazardly as possible, and the sad thing about this is that those stakes the climax wants to have are riding entirely on him. The fight between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul is the only part of this climax that can be vaguely called climactic. Viceroy is practically a non-issue. Anakin's whole sequence could have been accomplished just as well without him from a narrative standpoint, and Jar Jar's hijinks is all just that. It's comedy, it's slapstick. Forgetting for a second just how terrible of a directing decision it was to try and make a cohesive sequence out of these four disparate elements. It's hard to have a climax mean anything when you could have cut almost all of it and lost nothing of value. And also, apropos of nothing, this girl with braces seriously bothers me. Like, really, why does she have braces? Why are there braces in this movie? What is this? The very worst thing about The Phantom Menace is how totally salvageable it was. Yes, it was poorly acted, poorly paced, poorly plotted, and clearly had its focus in all the wrong places, but the character stuff was, well, functional. You could have taken the rough outline of the script and made something of it. Had what little was there been built upon in the other two films, I think this could have been remembered as an incredibly mediocre setup to something much better, rather than the beginning of a downward spiral the likes of which is yet to be recreated. Oh well, whatever, I guess. On to the next one!